Hello, everyone. I'm Sister Vassa, and today I would like to talk with you a little bit about the Sunday of the Prodigal Son. That is the second Sunday of the Lenten Triodion, that is this liturgical book that governs the whole system that is Byzantine Lent and also the pre-Lenten Sundays. So the Sunday of the Prodigal Son that focuses on the parable of the prodigal son as told to us in Luke chapter 15, is brought to our attention before Lent that we might retrieve a sense of loss and a sense of missing the home of our Father, as does the prodigal son when he realizes that he's eating the food of pigs. But I think most people know the story. So involved in our preparation for Lent is a retrieving of the thirst for communion with God, our Father in heaven. But I'd like to focus on a certain moment of the services of the Sunday of the Prodigal Son and also of the services of the next two Sundays preceding Lent, and that is the chanting or singing of the Psalm 136, also known as Psalm 137, that begins with the words, by the rivers or by the waters of Babylon, epiton potamon, Vavilonos, or narikach Vavilonskich. Now, I'd like to focus on the final words of this psalm because they pose an issue or a problem for many modern day hearers of this psalm. But I'll first say that this Psalm 136, 137 is expressing the yearnings and the sorrow of the Jewish people who have been led into captivity in Babylon after the armies of Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. So they're taken captive and they sit and they weep, as it says in the first words of the psalm, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept when we remembered Sion. Sion being that Mount Sion that was the place of worship of the chosen people, and now they've been separated from that place of worship, and they sang also, we hung our harps on the willows in the midst of it. So we're relating to this sense of exile, of our disconnect with God, right? But we're also not losing hope because we haven't broken our harps. We've hung them for the time being. But here, our captives are encouraging us to sing here, to accept this surrogate for our place of worship, also to degrade us by having us amused, because as it says in the next verse of the psalm, for there they that had taken us captive asked us of the words of a song, and they that had carried us away asked a hymn, saying, sing us one of the songs of Sion. And in response to that cruel demand, we say, how should we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? So we're also recognizing, allegorically, of course, because we transpose into our own lives the various meanings and situations described in the Bible. That's the only reason that the books of the Bible are handed down to us, because they are relevant to us. They tell us something not only about the real people and real situations that happen throughout salvation history, because that's how God reveals himself, through real people who, yes, by divine inspiration, pass down in Holy Scripture their experiences, right? But also through real language and the culture of that language, sometimes using dark images, right? So we have to keep in mind as we transpose into our own lives these real situations, that we do understand them allegorically, not literally. Literally speaking, the things mentioned in this psalm don't have meaning for our lives. For example, the daughter of Babylon, I'm going to get to the verses in a second, the daughter of Babylon doesn't really mean much to us today. Many of us, I think, will not even be able to point out where Babylon is on the map, but that does not make it impossible for us to relate on a certain spiritual level to what is being described here. But I want to get to the final verses. The seventh verse of this psalm goes like this: remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it even to its foundations. Here, my friends, the psalmist is talking about the people of Edom. Who are these people? The people of Edom lived to the southeast of Israel, and they were a sister nation to Israel as the descendants of Esau. Esau, who was the twin brother of Jacob and a little bit older than Jacob because he was born first. Jacob, also known as Israel, is the father of all Israelites. But Esau, his brother, is sort of the bad guy in the story. But we have to remember also, talking about the realism of the Bible, that Jacob himself engages in some activity that one could call morally ambivalent. Jacob is well known for having manipulated his brother, but also his father in his old age. Jacob manipulates Esau to exchange his birthright, give it to Jacob, who was not the firstborn, when Esau, being a hunter and coming home one fine evening and being hungry, Jacob has prepared a bowl of lentils. And Jacob says to his brother he will give him this bowl of lentils if he gives him in exchange his birthright. And Esau, being obviously an impulsive sort of guy, not thinking this out, agrees. So when the children of Edom, the Edomites or Idumeans, are mentioned here, what is being remembered is that they behaved poorly during the conquest of Jerusalem. You see, what the Edomites did is that they joined the army of Nebuchadnezzar against their brethren, and they were even encouraging the raising of the walls of Jerusalem even to the ground. But let's get to the final verses of the psalm. Wretched daughter of Babylon, blessed shall he be who shall reward you as you have rewarded us. Blessed shall he be who shall seize and dash your infants against the rock. Now, this violent image is to be read allegorically, as I've already indicated. Just like in our language today, we have certain dark images, certain dark ways of expressing certain not dark thoughts. For example, the expression, it's raining cats and dogs. If you overthink it, this is a violent image because were cats and dogs to be falling from the sky, they would splatter all over the pavement like raindrops, right? Or if you say something like, you can't swing a dead cat around here without hitting a racist. Are you promoting, using any of these expressions, violence against domestic animals or a disregard for the health and well-being of cats and dogs? I don't think you are, but if you are going to go about and point out that these are violent images and so forth, or if you point out, say, that the use of profanity sometimes, that's also used, say, by stand-up comedians to be funny and dark in a certain way. If you're always going to nitpick about allegorical images in language that are somehow offensive to somebody, I think that A, you will end up being a big bore. But B, I think if we lose the capacity to understand the intention behind words and instead only accept their literal meaning, I think that we lose the capacity to understand scripture. We might also lose the capacity to understand a lot of world literature and other forms of art. Now, the classical interpretation in our tradition of this psalm verse is that we are encouraged to, already in their inception, destroy those thoughts, the little baby thoughts that might lead us into larger temptations and eventually lead us into bondage, say to an addiction or to a codependency. So if there are those things that are bad for us, say if we're alcoholics, and there are little thoughts that start to creep in like creepy little babies into our minds just to go past that local pub or go and perhaps take a look at the liquor section, or if we have some other weak spot like a codependency with a person who was bad for us, and we want to just wander on to their Facebook page and maybe check out what they're doing, these types of babies need to be dashed against the rock who is Christ. So that's the classic interpretation. Were our tradition to sanitize everything for us, that we are not triggered by literal meanings of words, well, then our tradition would be infantilizing us, don't you think? And finally, if we only accept literal meanings of scriptural texts, well, a large part of the time we will be missing the point and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Those are just a few thoughts on that topic. Have a blessed preparation for Lent, everyone.